Hey, scrappers and recyclers, remember when we turned this into this and looked at the values of selling the material at the various stages of scrapping? Well, two things have come up since I posted that video, and they need to be addressed. The first one is the Geek Shark made a math error. Again, I think we have to fire Geek Shark. I really do. I think it's time that we just cut his fins off for soup and feed the carcass to the deep because this is getting out of hand. Now, the other thing was that folks were interested in the effect of shipping costs. I didn't address that the first time because it would have really dragged out an already long video. So let's go ahead and take a look at it now. We're over here in the spreadsheet and we see that the original numbers are fine. No errors here. The hard drive with the board, we made 725. If we considered the boards to be punched or bent, because remember, if you haven't seen the video yet, we discovered partway in that there was a small hole drilled in all of the hard drives. And it's important to look at this number anyway. So the scrap value for the hard drives punched or bent is 466. All right, I can ship for anywhere from 25 cents a pound to 45 cents a pound, depending upon the size and weight of the Gaylord that I'm putting together. So I'm just taking the average of 35 cents a pound. In the spreadsheet, it's easy enough for me to change the numbers so that I can see what I'm really going to get. Anyway, we went with the average 35 cents a pound. So shipping the hard drives with the boards is going to cost me $3.63. So we make $3.63. If we ship the hard drives as punched or bent, well, the shipping charge is still the same because the weight's the same, but we only make $1.04. So all of this is good. There's no errors here. We look at the next level of scrap, or the first level of scrap, where we take the boards off. The hard drives with no boards, here we had the weight. That's good. We've got the value at 25 cents a pound. We made $2.48. If we factor in shipping, well, we lose money shipping those carcasses. Even at 25 cents a pound, oops. This is what I want to do. So even at 25 cents a pound, we're breaking even. So, okay. Sometimes you just have to do that because you have to, get stuff out the door. And my yard won't take the hard drives at this stage. All right, so we sell the hard drives with no boards. We sell the SATA boards. We make, after shipping now, we make $2.94. So if we compare that $2.94 to this $3.63, we end up losing 68 cents. So we are in negative labor rate, pretty consistent with what it was not factoring in shipping. It makes a little bit of a difference with the punched or bent prices because, this labor rate actually goes up a little bit in the value. But again, the numbers are pretty small here. So, it's not a huge difference. I mean, the labor rate looks big because we're talking about some pretty small numbers anyway. So what this tells me is that if the hard drives are punched or bent, then it is worth my time to remove the boards. Even though I may only break even shipping the empty carcass, I make up for it in the additional value of the board separated from the hard drive. Now, here's where the mistake came in. If we look at the next level of scrap, well, we did everything right. We just forgot to add in the value of the hard drive boards when we did this the first time. I mean Geek Shark, forgot to add in the value of the hard drives. So when we add that $4.09 into the mix, what we end up with is that the value before we do anything with shipping was $11.84. Now everything here becomes a positive number, and the labor rates are pretty reasonable, kind of. $8.82 a pound, an hour for labor is a little better than federal minimum wage. Not as good as what most state minimum wages are, but it's not terrible. And $13.83 an hour is getting close to the $15 an hour that many places consider to be a livable minimum wage. If we factor in the shipping fees, now let's go through this carefully. I want you to understand where these numbers come from. I had figured out that it cost me about $1, going to the scrapyard. So if I take that dollar and I divide it by the weight of the material I'm carrying, in this case, we have 5 different types of materials. So we're going to call it 20 cents a pound. You could make an argument that it's less because, you're taking a full load in, whether it's your car, your truck, or whatever. So this is probably going to be less. But for the purposes of demonstration here, I'm just going to go with the 20 cents a pound. We break even on the dirty aluminum. The SATA boards are getting shipped. So there's our 35 cents a pound shipping fee. We make a few cents on the aluminum. The platters, I'm not putting any shipping fees on that because remember, we're going with the $6.94 a pound that we found on eBay for selling these on eBay. And when you sell these on eBay, you can get the buyers to pay the shipping. So you're not paying for that shipping. And the same with the magnets. There is a legitimate argument that you should deduct eBay's fees that you do pay as a seller. But those are going to be different depending upon how you're selling it. Are you a shop? Are you private? The way you're selling it. So I'm not going to include those fees. So that means that if we take the shells down to dirty aluminum, which means the little motor is still on the shell, and we factor in shipping, we will make $9.96. So when we compare that to the value of the hard drives, if not punched or bent, so what we do is we take this number and we subtract this number, then we end up with this number. And now we're making $12.26 an hour. So that's not terrible. It's not great. It's not terrible. And just for clarification, I have not factored in any time related to actually packing up the material to ship it or to drive it down to the scrapyard because holy cow, well, that really starts to get insane. Not that, it isn't a fun exercise, just probably a lot more than you all are interested in. If we look at the increase in value compared to the boards being punched or bent, we made an additional $8.93. So our labor rate is now $17.27 an hour. And now we're getting above that minimum wage where a lot of states consider minimum wage at $15 an hour. If we now go and clean the boards to clean aluminum, and we still have the 2 dirty shells left over, what we end up with is adding in those SATA boards, because again, we left those out by mistake. we now make $11.46 after we've paid for the shipping. So when we compare that to the value of the hard drives not punched or bent, um, shipping charges considered, we've made an additional $7.83. We're at $14.46 an hour, which is, okay, not great, not terrible. If the hard drives are punched or bent, we made $10.42 more. And now we're at $19.24 an hour. That's better than what most states consider a living minimum wage. Is a small business, depends upon the size of your small business, that's an acceptable number. And then we cleaned up one of the shells. So now we had clean aluminum shells with one of them that was still dirty. When we run that math, we make $12.74. And, we make a little more money because of what we've done. Our labor rate is similar. So compared to the hard drives not punched or bent, this labor rate, $13.84, it's comparable to $14.46. It's a little bit less because remember that shell took 7 minutes all by itself. So there was a lot of time that was spent on that. And if it was not punched, if it is punched or bent, now our labor rate $17.77, and that's compared to this $19.24. Again, because it took so long to get that troublesome shell cleaned up. Now, I did have some folks who left comments in the last video that said, well, just beat the thing. Don't take the time to try to get that screw out. Just, beat it with a ball bean hammer, a hatchet. Those are viable options to save time. You may or may not be able to sell what you end up with. I wanted to make sure that I had unambiguous products that our scrapyards would recognize and each of us would recognize in order to stay consistent with the math. So what do we end up with? If we take the time to take everything down to the basic forms, clean aluminum shells, dirty aluminum reader heads, the SATA boards, the platters, the magnets, and if we can sell the platters and the magnets for the values that we found on eBay, then it is worth your time to do that, even when you factor in shipping. And for some of you, those shipping charges may be less because you may be able to drive everything to your local yard without having to pay a shipping company to move it for you. There's still some shipping charge involved. Your vehicle is putting on miles and there's a cost for that. A lot of people just write that off and don't consider that. But I wanted to be as accurate as we could here. I want to thank Greg 19185, or it might be Greg L 9185. I'm not quite sure when I look at the name on the comment which one that is, but Greg, thank you for pointing out the error with the SATA boards being left off of these later calculations. Greg, if you will email me at sharkscrapper@gmail.com, your snail mail address, I will get a $10 Dunkin' gift card off to you as my way of saying thank you for finding the math error. As always, I want to encourage everyone to please check my math because if there's an error, I will be happy to correct it so that accurate information is out there. Being money-making in scrap involves math. And you can't be afraid of math. And if you're doing your math, you can't be afraid to fess up when you make a mistake. When I was in the Navy and when I was in corporate business, I had teams that I was working with, and we would double and triple check each other's numbers. And this is very important to make sure that the mistakes that get made don't get outside of the building. I am working by myself, So mistakes happen, and I don't always catch them because it is very hard to catch your own mistakes. Even when you double and triple check your own numbers, it's very easy to become blind to your own mistakes. So thank you for catching the mistake, Greg, and for everyone out there, please, if you see an error in the math, let me know because, yeah, I'm just looking for any excuse to get rid of Geek Shark now. He's a real pain in the butt. Anyway, while I'm trying to figure out ways to get rid of Geek Shark, why don't you all check out the videos that are popping up on either side of the screen and the big round one in the middle. That's to help you to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a great day, everybody. Be safe.